You're listening to the DCAU Review, hosted by Cal and Liam, streaming on iTunes and at facebook.com/DCAU Review. Now, here's today's episode.
Hey, welcome to the DCAU Review. I'm your host, Cal. This is episode 14 already of the DCAU Review. Crazy to think about. Alongside me, as always, my co-host and the guy that runs the absolute best Twitter account. He doesn't just run one Twitter account. He runs another podcast Twitter account. He runs his own Twitter account. This guy is multi-talented Twitter famous. Well, at least he should be.
I am very busy on the social media front.
I don't know how you do it. All those plates spinning in the air. But with me, my brother and good friend, co-host, Liam. Liam, welcome to DCA Review episode number 14.
I don't overuse this word. I am ecstatic to talk about the episode we've got to talk about today.
We have what could be, Liam, maybe a top 5 episode in DCAU lore here.
Yeah.
You talk about your classics. You talk about your Hearts of Ice, or your Heart of Ice. You talk about, maybe Star-Crossed, or, some of those other... I'm trying to think of some of the more famous Justice League episodes. The Vandal Savage episode. Savage Time is great.
Divided We Fall and Unlimited, the Confrontation epilogue.
Absolutely. You have these sort of like 10 posts that are just great episodes. Nothing to Fear, we talked about, was one of those good episodes in Batman the Animated Series. But today we have might be the best Superman animated series episode, but is and definitely could be in the top 5, maybe top 10 of DCAU total episodes. We are, of course, talking about episode of Superman the Animated Series, The Late Mr. Kent, which is, Liam, we talked about before we hit the record button that this is a unique episode in that it is very different from almost every episode of the DCAU, whether you're looking at Batman Beyond, Superman, Static Shock, Batman the Animated Series, New Batman Adventures, Justice League Unlimited, whatever it is. This, because
the Zeta Project.
Yeah, I wonder if that's going to be on the DC streaming service. There is a Batman Beyond episode or two that are tied to that, so might have to branch off into that.
We'll see.
Maybe. That'll be episode like 3,000 of the DCAU Review, after we've reviewed every other Elseworlds possible cartoon or whatever.
We'll review Marvel stuff first. Right. We'll get to it one day.
One day we'll get to the Zeta Project. No, but this episode it's formulaic in that it is set up a lot. You mentioned it's set up like maybe like a 1940s or 50s serial detective type story.
Yeah.
In that you start off with a narration from Clark Kent. And it's a shocking start to the episode. They're at a funeral, and they don't tell you at first who the funeral is, and then they reveal a few minutes into it that it's Clark Kent's funeral.
Yeah.
And we know that Clark isn't dead because Superman is standing there at the funeral, but then they slowly go back and reveal how they got to this point. And it is written incredibly well. I neglected to do the research on who the writer on this is, which we'll do.
It was Stan Berkowitz.
Stan Berkowitz, tremendous. This episode is, it's just so good. You take a formula that it's not an original formula. How, you start sort of in the middle of the plot, you go back, and then you work your way back to that same point, and then work forward. But it's executed so incredibly well here. You have Clark Kent, who apparently has died. They go back and they go through. He's investigating this murder. This guy that's on death row that's about to be put to death. Which, talk about deep subjects of a children's cartoon.
Yeah,
we'll get to that a little bit later. But guy on death row for a crime.
A nuance in like how crimes are punished, because the criminal freely admits to Clark Kent, I'm a thief, I've stolen plenty of times, but I've never hurt anybody. And sort of the idea of sort of trying to explain in a children's cartoon like the differences in sentencing and how like a thief should be treated compared to how a murderer should be treated.
And, not to get into like social issues or whatever, he does happen to be African American also, which is like, you could kind of go into some of that if you want to, and how their sentencing versus...
It's certainly implied that it was kind of open and shut, and as we learn through the plot, it's because the cop who was working the case is the true murderer who has been framing this maybe not quite innocent, but certainly not a murderer.
They do touch on, though, too, that because he is where he was socioeconomically, that he only could afford a public defender, and the public defender didn't do their due diligence to check all the facts. So there is a subtle little...
and sort of the idea that maybe people were just really willing to believe that this guy did it, because he's a criminal already. He's a criminal, of course. Already. And he tried to fence the victim's necklace, so of course he killed her.
Right, there's circumstantial evidence
shut.
There. Yeah. Yeah, it's very nuanced in that, right, for sure. But the interesting thing I think about this episode is that there's so many levels of it. We'll get right into our categories here, Liam. We talk about plot, music, our visuals and animation is our third category, and then our fourth category is voice acting. But we talk about the plot here first. Man, this plot is just tremendous. It twists and turns. It's kind of obvious from the get-go. Whenever you introduce a brand new character to a setting, more likely than not, that guy's going to be... It's like Hush. The Hush comic book series, spoiler alert, the Hush comic book series is one of my favorite series
Absolutely.
It's written so well, but it was kind of telegraphed that Tommy Elliott, this brand new character that they're introducing into this series, ends up being the bad guy. So the fact that they introduced this Detective Bowman at the very beginning as this guy, and he's not just a background character, and he's the guy that's working on the case, and he seems shady, and it kind of telegraphed it a little bit that he's going to end up being the guy that is framing and setting up this guy for murder. Yeah,
there's not really, and maybe that speaks to the time constraints of 20 minutes, there's not really time to set up a secondary suspect.
Right.
To kind of get the heat off him like you would see in a normal Law and Order type procedural drama or something where you have 45 minutes or whatever when you cut out commercials, so you can add in 2 or 3 red herrings.
Right.
You didn't necessarily have time, so that's fair. That there weren't a ton of suspects, so it wasn't necessarily that part of the mystery, but the mystery is he solves the mystery pretty early on of who's behind it. There's probably still about 8 to 10 minutes left in the episode when he does, but it's again finding the evidence, which goes into Clark Kent as a reporter and as something of a detective here,
right? Because the evidence that he discovers that's going to free this guy gets destroyed in the explosion that supposedly kills Clark Kent. So then it's he knows at this point that the guy's innocent. How does he, as Clark Kent, who's now dead, prove that this guy's innocent when the evidence itself has been destroyed without revealing his secret identity, but while still working within the constraints of the law? Because as Superman, he could go in and break this guy out of prison too.
Yeah,
and he knows that's not the answer. He has to prove this guy innocent.
And he ends up having a discussion with his parents about maybe I just have to reveal to people I can't let this guy die, even if it means I have to tell everybody that I was Clark Kent.
That's such a great and I know how much your appreciation for Superman has increased over the last several years, but that really speaks to the Superman character as well. It's he's Superman, but really he's Clark.
Yeah,
and he talks about in that conversation with his parents, he talks about how this can't be the end for Clark Kent because he will go crazy if he has to be Superman all the time.
Yeah. And that always speaks to, there's the idea of, is Superman sort of a selfish person by having a personal life because he's, while he's sitting typing at his computer at the Daily Planet, there's an earthquake in Nicaragua he's not taking care of or something.
Right.
The idea of he could be everywhere all the time theoretically, and he's not necessarily. He's sort of, we've talked about this before, he's sort of the fireman of the DC universe.
Sure.
When the big epic thing, and maybe that's also a reason that this plot it stands out so much, is because it's not this large, grandiose, it's not a giant gorilla or an alien invasion. It's a guy is appealing to his humanity. You are my last hope, Mr. Kent. Please save my life.
Yep.
And he even mentioned, I thought they actually did a pretty good job of why he was even driving to the governor's house to give him this evidence, because he wanted this to be a moment for Clark Kent to stand
and
tall.
Get the credit, absolutely, instead of Superman getting the glory for
so I thought they even kind of covered their bases in what could have been little nitpicking moments of, why was he even driving a car? That's why, because he wanted this to be Clark Kent's win. So, I gave plot 10 out of 10. It's tremendous. It's, as you said, top 5, maybe top 3 of the best episodes I think the DCAU ever produced. And it's just tremendous all around. I thought from a plot perspective, it's perfect.
Yeah, I think this is our first time we've ever been on the same page as far as this is concerned. But we both gave plot a 10 out of 10 on this. It's man, this episode is so great. Man, I remember. I mean, I got real excited when we talked about doing this episode.
Yeah,
and even up to the very last seconds of the episode, which are intense, especially for a child's cartoon. But it's just like, man. It's just so great when he gives that last line when Bowman, spoiler alert, when Bowman is on death row now for the murder. Which, by the way, the only thing in the plot that I didn't get was, did they ever give a reason why he did the murder?
No,
they didn't. Yeah, they didn't. He framed him for it, but they don't really give a reason why he committed the murder itself, which is maybe a plot hole, but it's more or less an afterthought. But regardless, he was convicted, and he's on death row, and he comes to the realization seconds before he's gassed to death that Clark Kent is Superman, and it's just so great. Yeah, 10 out of 10 for the plot for this. If you want to spend 22 minutes and just enjoy DC Animated Universe cartoon, plop this one in.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is the way to go. All right, moving on to our next one, Liam. Music. Music I thought was okay. This is an episode, it didn't need music. It falls into that same category that we always do. It wasn't offensive. It didn't distract. I don't think it added anything. There's a scene at the end with a helicopter where Bowman is attacking him with a police helicopter. That I didn't really even notice the music in that. The Superman theme, it comes in where Superman saves Lois from being thrown down a flight of steps. But it wasn't distracting. Thought it was fine. Gave it a 5 out of 10.
Yeah, I went a little stronger. I went 7 out of 10 on this. I thought, yes, there's a few moments where the Superman theme came in that I think really worked. Where he when he gets a water tower, he pulls it off the top of a building to put out a fire after Bowman blows up Clark Kent's apartment. They bring in the Superman theme there, which I thought was very nice. And yeah, again, when he's fighting, Bowman's in a helicopter firing missiles at him, and the theme kind of comes in there. And then a little bit again when he saves the inmate from being cast. Apparently that's the only way Metropolis executes. Not only do they believe in capital punishment, they believe in extreme capital punishment in Metropolis.
I guess is that what they were doing in the 30s? They were gassing people when they were killing, because this is super, it's like future retro.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Maybe, I guess maybe that's because there wouldn't be time for him to save him once the switch is thrown if it was an electric chair.
And they're not doing hangings.
Right, or guillotines.
or like gunshots, I guess.
Right.
I don't know.
But, so I went 7 out of 10. I thought there was some nice kind of sorrowful music in a few spots during the funeral scene at the beginning, and there's a scene where, we'll get to that in voice acting, I think, but when Lois and Superman are sort of just talking about Clark Kent, while they're sort of investigating together, and Lois kind of pours her heart out a little bit about how much she cared for Clark as a person, and I just thought the music undertones there I thought were pretty strong. So yeah, I went 7 out of 10 for that.
Yeah. All right. Cool. All right. Moving on to visuals and animation. Let's hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I went another 10 out of 10 on this.
Yeah.
I thought,
wow, is this our first episode with 2 10s in it?
This might be the first double 10s. There's obviously been ones where we've each given a 10, but right. I don't know if either of us have ever had a double 10 before.
Wow.
So I just thought it was tremendous. I thought everybody is on point. The animation is great. There's some excellent #Kate movement, which we haven't gotten to talk about in a couple weeks
yet. Finally.
I've been itching for it.
Yeah.
When Superman's standing in the graveyard, and you see his cape flowing there. When he's again putting out the fire, you see it there when he's fighting the helicopter, and really cool part at the end again when he's saving the death row inmate's life. He spins around and creates a wind funnel and pulls all of the gas out of the room and
right into the atmosphere.
Right, flies it up into the atmosphere. I imagine Metropolis just had a spike in goose deaths. Just any birds flying through at that point just dropped immediately. But I thought there's a lot of great visuals, and again showing genuine emotions. There's a part where when the bomb goes off in Clark's car, there's a really cool shot where it kind of flashes white, but you can still see Clark, and he's got this kind of look of like shock and anger on his face as he realizes what's happening, and and he crashes into the water, and sort of the color scheme changes as he gets kind of further away from the sun, and him moving through the water I thought was animated really well, and sort of poking up above the surface, and there's a lot of just tremendous to the very last shot, as you mentioned, when Bowman is about to be gassed, and he gets his eyes light up when he says he's Superman, and you can see his eyes are bloodshot, like you can see the veins in his eyes, which I thought was a really, really nice touch. So yeah, I went 10 out of 10 for
another
for
perfect
visuals here.
score.
So what about you?
I went 9 out of 10. I felt like my only nitpicky complaint was I thought Bowman's character design was a little exaggerated. He kind of looked a little off compared to the rest of Superman's characters. I know we're getting this episode, I believe, is past World's Finest at this point in the. Is it past World's Finest? Yeah, I think it's just past World's Finest. So I think some of the animators should change. The rest of the episode is animated just beautifully. You already mentioned the crash scene is animated really well in the water. There's a scene where a missile gets shot at Superman and he catches it. And the way that it goes is that it follows the missile all the way till Superman catches it. And then after he catches it, you see him launch with the missile into this kind of, I guess, sewer exit or something like that. Under a bridge. It's great. Just animated so incredibly well. Everybody I thought looked on point. There was nothing. It was a lot of nighttime, so maybe that we talked about how daylight seems to kind of expose some things in the animation sometimes. But man, it's close to perfectly animated. I thought the characters looked on point. A lot of hashtag costume changes in this episode too. Lois wearing 3 or 4 different outfits, and characters dressed in all black at Superman's funeral instead of or at Clark's funeral.
Jimmy Olsen got out of those baggy pants for once.
Yeah, I don't know how he runs in those things. Got to carry a lot of film in his pockets, I guess. I don't know. He's got his cameras like strapped to his thighs. I don't know. But yeah, it's animated really well. There's a lot of explosions. The explosion scene at Clark's apartment is good. The fire is done really well. The water tower, he goes and gets a water tower to put that out. I thought that was great. The use of the X-ray vision, we talked about that, I think, in the very first episode, and how they do that. That's executed perfectly every single time. Not only do you have the sound effect that they use so you know what power he's using at the time, but also the way that they execute it is great. There's a scene where he uses it to identify Bowman at the scene of the explosion at his apartment. But it's great. From that to the scene where he busts through the wall to save Lois from falling down the steps. Yeah. It was just it's executed perfectly.
There's like little when Lois is sort of telling Bowman that she has this evidence against him. There's like little beads of sweat forming on Bowman's face.
Yep, and her face, like her sort of her reaction and how changing up and being coy with him and trying to get him to admit to being the person that actually did the murder is good too. Just a little subtle thing. So I gave visuals a 9 out of 10. So not a perfect score, but 9 out of 10. All right, so moving on, we're on our last category, Liam. We're at voice acting. Tell us what we need to know about our voice actors from this week.
So, really, it's not a big cast this week. You've got the regular suspects. You got Tim Daly, who is carrying the lion's share of this episode.
He does a narration bit, which
absolutely
correct. I struggle to think of another episode where there's a character who does voiceover narration.
No, I was trying to think if there's like a Batman where he does it. There's a little bit of it in like Robin's Reckoning, like
sure,
like Dick kind of narrates his own origin story a little bit.
Yeah,
but it's very rare that you get that sort of just traditional narration of a story. And so Tim Daly telling the story and sort of explaining his own motivations and wanting to to have a win for Clark instead of for Superman, and then even going through, as you mentioned in the scene with his parents, talking about how he needs to be Clark Kent, which I thought was, again, the character who is theoretically the least human physically is maybe the most human of all, of any DC hero.
Right.
So I thought Tim Daly, one of his greatest performances, if not his greatest performance. I thought Dana Delaney was fantastic.
She's great. Yeah, she invokes a lot of emotion, especially in a scene where she's looking at the photograph you mentioned.
Yeah.
Clark's apartment. She goes through a very wide range of emotions here, from that to when she's interrogating Bowman to when she's even at the very end in the scene where they explain how Clark supposedly had amnesia and went to stay with Lana Lang, and that's how he survived. The subtle sarcasm and the disbelief that she has that sort of suspecting things at this point. They don't let on that she necessarily knows that he's Superman, but not necessarily believing that Clark is telling the truth in all of this. Does a great job with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Eddie Barth is Detective Bowman.
What do you think of his performance?
It's good. He's not an over the top villain. He's a little. He sounds like a grizzled, 1950s police detective. He's got a little bit of some kind of accent, and he sounds kind of world weary and a little surly. So I thought it worked. I don't think he's the weakest part. I even thought David Kaufman as Jimmy Olsen, I thought had a few. He's not a big part of the episode, but his ability to kind of share in the sadness with Lois at the end when she's writing the story about how Superman saved a death row inmate, and they're kind of remarking how it's just not quite as much fun to write these stories and take these pictures when Clark's not there.
Right.
So I thought overall, voice acting I gave an 8 out of 10. I didn't think Bowman was great, and if there was that iconic performance, I don't know, you could pick a voice. Ron Perlman came to mind, like somebody really picture perfect. Maybe could have made this the third 10 of my of my ratings here. So he, I think, lets it down a little bit. So I went 8 out of 10 for that. What about you?
I went 9 out of 10. I think for all the reasons we just talked about. Tim Daly's great. Dana Delaney's great. I wouldn't give it a perfect score because of that. I thought Bowman was a little bit over the top. That last line though, he's Superman. Like when he says that's.
How did he survive that car bomb? How? He's Superman.
That's classic for me. Like that's one that's in my head for forever. So all those reasons, and this episode is as close to perfect as you can get.
Well, it's funny, we've mentioned a few times there's certain episodes that like we had on tape or that just got played a lot on Kids WB when we were growing up. This one was not like in heavy circulation.
I think maybe that's why.
Maybe because it was such a mature topic. But so we probably saw it once or twice maybe.
Right.
But like there's beats of this that I remembered like perfectly long before DVDs, full seasons of DVDs were coming out.
Absolutely.
So which I think again sticks to, I saw it when I was 8 or 9 years old and remembered a lot of it and remembered what a great story it was.
Absolutely.
And I do have a bonus point this week to give.
Hit us with a bonus point.
Yes.
It's tremendous.
Maybe I should have said this during visuals, but there's when they're about to launch the gas chamber. They have a cop who's administering the switch for the gas to fill the chamber, and he's wearing an executioner's hood. It's so.
Is this standard? Is this standard police procedure?
Like I've never been to a death sentencing before, so I don't know. But I'm pretty sure I don't think many security guards or
they just did it to protect his identity because they don't want any repercussions.
Perhaps,
I guess.
You don't want the
rich cop is the guy that actually pulled the trigger.
Right.
You
don't want the anti-death penalty groups getting on this guy. He just pulled the switch.
He's just getting.
So he has
an
evil executioner hood.
That was so random.
I was like, what the F was that? But it was in. I don't know. Somehow it makes it even better.
It does. It adds
because it makes it also seem even less humane than I'd already seen when they're about to kill this innocent man, and it's like, and they've got like the governor and some other police officials just sitting calmly watching as this man in this ridiculous hood is about to. Again, it's a gas chamber.
It's a gas chamber.
So I give a bonus point for the hooded executioner prisoner guard. Which I think brings my total up to 36 of 40.
36 out of 40 is what I got for you as well.
I've got to check, but this might be the highest rated episode of anything we've done so far.
Pretty sure that's our highest rating. Between the two of us, I'm pretty sure that's the highest. We may have had 35 before, but I don't remember going up that high. Maybe a 36 for
so
either.
This is certainly, as you mentioned, in that upper echelon of Nothing to Fear, of the Phantasm movie, which again speaks to how this had 22 minutes to tell a story.
It was really good.
And it was perfect, and it was pretty darn perfect. So,
yep.
That really, I think, speaks highly to the creative team involved, from the writers to the animators.
Absolutely.
Everybody that worked on this deserved it. They won daytime Emmys for various things. I don't think they won one for this, but they really should have.
And weirdly, they didn't do a for the DVD. They didn't do a commentary for this episode, which I would have loved to hear. Maybe in the future they'll do one or something on an anniversary or something. But yeah, definitely. My final score, by the way, 33 out of 40. So we're right in the same neighborhood. This is a really great episode. With that said, do us a favor, hit us up on social media. Liam runs our Twitter, as I mentioned, at DCAU Review. Man, if you've watched this episode, or if you haven't watched this episode in the last several years...
Shut our show off right now and go watch it, man.
I don't know why you're listening to this instead of doing that. Go watch it. Give us some feedback. Let us know what you thought. It is a tremendously fun episode, written so incredibly well. Really, if you don't enjoy it, we'll give you your money back. Unless you pay for it to rent it, in which case we're not going to pay for you to rent something else. Go watch it on Amazon for free, or find it however you find things on the internet. But with that said, we'll start to wrap things up here. We thank you so much for listening to this episode of the DCAU Review. If you like us, please do us a favor. Like us on Facebook. Find us at DCAU Review. We don't do much on there because, as Liam always says, Facebook makes you pay. But we do a lot of stuff on Twitter, and by we, I mean Liam. Liam runs our Twitter account, so tweet any feedback at him. He's always good at interacting and discussing things, themes, thoughts on different things. Maybe you disagree with us. Maybe you hate this episode. Maybe you think that we're looking at this with Superman-colored glasses. But we'd love to hear, regardless, what your feedback is. Check us out on the iTunes, please. We'd love a subscription. Subscribe to us and give us a 5-star review. That helps us out tremendously with our ratings and stuff on there. Gets us some more listens if possible. We'd love to get out there and have more people listen to us. Liam, any closing thoughts?
No, just like we always say at the end, love interacting with people. This is such a tremendous episode. It's one of those episodes you watch it and then you record a show and you talk about how great it was, and you just remind you, oh yeah, that's why we wanted to do this show. Yeah, it's because we talked about just trying to rank episodes or doing this all in our head or typing out a list. It's like, no, I want to talk about this stuff for half hours, however long it takes to just let you all know how freaking great this episode and episodes like this are.
So tremendous. All right, so with that, we're going to wrap things up. Thank you for listening to us. I'm Cal.
And I'm Liam.
And we will talk to you on next week's episode.
Goodbye. 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 Goodbye.